My name is Amanda Bennett, and I am 19 years old. From the outside, people think I live a privileged life. Big house, perfect family, endless opportunities. But what they don't see is the prison built out of my father's expectations. Every step I take, every breath I draw, seems to belong to him, not to me. Growing up, my father never asked me what I wanted. Instead, he decided everything long before I was old enough to form an opinion. He chose which school I should attend, which friends I should keep, and which dreams were acceptable. Anything outside his plan was immediately dismissed as foolish. To him, I wasn't a daughter, I was an investment, a reflection of his reputation. That night at dinner, it all came crashing down. We sat around the massive oak table in silence, except for the sound of his voice filling the room. He spoke with his usual cold authority, outlining my future, as if it were some kind of business strategy. "You'll start your law studies in September, Amanda," he declared, his tone final. "After graduation, you'll join the firm. And there's someone I want you to meet. His father is a long-time associate of mine. It's time you understood the importance of aligning with the right family." I froze. My fork slipped from my fingers and clattered against the porcelain plate. My heart pounded so loudly I was sure both of them could hear it. He wasn't just dictating my education anymore. He was dictating my marriage. My life partner. My future. I looked at my mother, searching for her eyes, silently begging her to speak up. To say something. To protect me. But she avoided my gaze, lowering her head as if the tablecloth had suddenly become the most fascinating thing in the world. That silence pierced me deeper than my father's commands ever could. My chest tightened, my throat burned, and before I knew it, the words spilled out of me, trembling with rage and desperation. "Dad, do you even hear yourself?" My voice cracked, but I didn't care. "You treat me like some project, like I don't have a mind or a heart of my own. Your expectations are driving me insane. I am not your puppet, and I am certainly not your trophy." The room went still. My father's eyes narrowed, his jaw tightening in silent fury. But I wasn't finished. I turned to my mother, tears stinging my eyes, my voice trembling not with fear but with betrayal. "Mom," I whispered, then my voice rose until it echoed against the walls. "Mom, how could you let this happen?" The words hung in the air like a curse. My father's stare grew darker, but my mother's silence was worse. She closed her eyes for a moment, as though the weight of my scream had pressed down on her soul. And that's when I realized something chilling. Her silence wasn't just weakness. It was guilt. She knew more than she ever admitted. I pushed away from the table, my chair scraping against the floor. My body was trembling, my breath unsteady. Something inside me had cracked wide open, and there was no going back. That night, I lay awake in my room, my father's voice replaying in my mind, but louder than his was the echo of my mother's silence. I couldn't stop wondering, why didn't she defend me? What was she hiding? For the first time in my life, I wasn't just angry. I was determined to find out the truth. The house felt heavier after that dinner, as if the walls themselves had absorbed my father's words and my scream. I could feel the weight pressing on me even in my room, where the air seemed suffocating. I tossed and turned all night, my mind racing. My mother's silence wouldn't leave me alone. It haunted me. The next morning, I woke up before anyone else. I wasn't even hungry, but I forced myself downstairs, hoping the routine of breakfast might calm me. But when I entered the kitchen, the sight stopped me cold. My mother was there, sitting at the table in her robe, staring blankly at a cup of tea that had already gone cold. She didn't even notice me at first. Her eyes were puffy and red, her hands trembling slightly as she held the porcelain cup. "Mom?" I asked softly. She jumped, startled, and quickly wiped her face as if erasing evidence of tears. "Amanda, you're up early," she said, forcing a weak smile. I wanted to ask her why. Why she stayed silent. Why she let Dad crush me like that. But something told me it wasn't the right moment. So I just nodded and poured myself some water, keeping one eye on her. She looked like a woman carrying a secret that was slowly devouring her from the inside. Later that day, while my parents were out, my father at the office, my mother at errands she wouldn't explain, I wandered the house. It was more than boredom, it was instinct. Something inside me whispered that there was more to this story. I ended up in my parents' bedroom. The room smelled faintly of my mother's lavender perfume and my father's cologne, a strange mixture that made my stomach twist. I knew I shouldn't be there, but curiosity overpowered guilt. I opened drawers, rifled through closets. Nothing unusual. But then, at the back of my father's desk drawer, hidden beneath neatly folded documents, I found an old envelope. Yellowed at the edges, sealed but not locked away. My hands trembled as I slid it open. Inside was a letter written in delicate handwriting I didn't recognize. My breath caught as I read the first line. "Dearest Evelyn, I know the choice you made will haunt you, but remember, it was for her safety." Evelyn. My mother's name. I read faster, my heart hammering in my chest. The letter went on about keeping the truth hidden and avoiding danger. And then, at the very end, the sentence that shattered me. "One day, Amanda will have questions. When she does, you must tell her who she really is." I froze, the letter trembling in my grip. Who she really is. They were talking about me. My pulse raced, my mind spinning in 1,000 directions. What did it mean? Was I adopted? Was there some family secret about my birth? My mother had always avoided questions about her past, but I never imagined it was because of this. I stuffed the letter back into the envelope and shoved it into my pocket just as I heard the sound of the front door opening. My parents were home. I rushed back to my room, my heart pounding so loudly I thought they'd hear it echo down the hallway. I leaned against my bedroom door, clutching the envelope like it was a ticking bomb. One thing was certain now, my mother wasn't just silent because she was weak. She was silent because she was hiding something that could tear our family apart. That night, I couldn't look at her the same way. Every time her eyes flickered toward me, I wondered if she knew I'd found it. And the most terrifying thought of all? If my father knew about the letter, what would he do to keep the truth buried? I couldn't keep the letter hidden forever. It burned in my pocket like fire, as if the words themselves were alive, whispering their truth into my ear every time I tried to forget them. For 2 days I avoided my mother, watching her carefully, waiting for the right moment. But the silence between us grew unbearable. On the third evening, I couldn't take it anymore. She was sitting in the living room, knitting as the soft glow of the lamp framed her face. It looked almost peaceful, but I knew better now. That serenity was a mask. My hands were trembling as I held the envelope behind my back. "Mom," I began, my voice sharper than I intended. "I need to ask you something. And this time, I want the truth." Her knitting needles paused mid-air. Slowly, she looked up at me, her lips parting slightly as if she already knew what was coming. "Amanda," she whispered, almost pleading. I pulled the letter out and placed it on the table between us. Her eyes widened, and the color drained from her face. The needles slipped from her hands, clattering onto the floor. "Where did you find this?" she demanded, her voice shaking in a way I had never heard before. "In Dad's drawer," I replied coldly. "Don't change the subject. What does it mean? Who am I really?" For a long moment, she just stared at the envelope, her chest rising and falling as though she were struggling to breathe. Finally, she closed her eyes and covered her mouth with her hand. Tears welled up, but she didn't wipe them away. "Amanda." Her voice cracked. "I wanted to tell you so many times, but your father, he swore me to silence. He said it was for your safety." "My safety?" I nearly laughed, though it came out bitter. "From what? From who?" She looked at me then, her eyes full of both fear and love. "From the people who wanted you gone before you even had a chance to live." My body went rigid. The room felt suddenly smaller, as though the walls were closing in. "What are you talking about? Am I?" My throat tightened. "Am I even his daughter?" Her silence was the answer. The sound of the clock ticking filled the room, each second louder than the last. My mother finally whispered, "Your father isn't your biological father. He took you in to protect you. But he never forgave me for what happened before. And he certainly doesn't want you finding out." I felt like the ground had disappeared beneath me. My entire identity, the childhood I thought I knew, was crumbling into dust. Before I could ask anything else, heavy footsteps echoed in the hallway. My mother's face turned pale. "Hide the letter," she hissed. "Now." I shoved it under the cushion just as my father entered the room. His gaze swept over us, sharp and calculating. "What's going on here?" he asked, his tone deceptively calm. "Nothing," my mother answered too quickly. Her voice trembled, but she forced a smile. "Just talking." My father's eyes lingered on me for a moment, longer than necessary, as though he could see straight through my skin into the secret now burning inside me. A smirk tugged at his lips, cold, knowing. "Good," he said finally. "Because secrets, Amanda, have a way of destroying families." Then he turned and walked away, leaving me frozen. Did he know I had found the letter? Or was he warning me not to dig deeper? Either way, the truth was now clear. My life was built on lies. And if I wanted answers, I'd have to risk tearing my family apart to find them. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mother's words echoed in my head. "Your father isn't your biological father. He took you in to protect you." Protect me from what? Or from whom? I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, the darkness pressing down on me, my thoughts spiraling. Every memory I had suddenly felt unreliable. Had everything been a performance? Every smile, every family dinner, every affectionate word from my father. Was it all a lie? By morning, I knew one thing for certain. I couldn't sit back and wait for answers to come to me. I needed to uncover the truth myself. I started by sneaking into my father's study again. It was early, the sun just barely rising, painting the room in a dull orange glow. The leather chair creaked as I pulled open the drawers, my heart pounding with every movement. The letter was only the beginning. I was sure there had to be more. After several minutes of searching, I found it. A small locked box hidden behind old tax files at the bottom of the cabinet. My fingers trembled as I lifted it out. The box was heavy, metallic, with scratches across the surface as though someone had tried to destroy it before. Of course, it was locked. Frustrated, I almost gave up. But then I noticed the keychain hanging from a hook on the bookshelf, one of my father's old keys. I hesitated, listening carefully to the silence of the house. Then, with shaking hands, I slipped the key into the lock. Click. Inside were documents, photographs, and another envelope. I picked up the first photo. It was old, slightly faded, showing my mother holding a baby in her arms. Her smile was radiant, but what made my chest tighten was the man standing beside her. It wasn't my father. He looked younger than I'd expected, with dark eyes and a kind of intensity in his expression that felt almost familiar. My hands trembled as I realized, this man might be my real father. My breath caught when I saw the back of the photo. A single word written in my mother's handwriting, Elias. Elias. I whispered the name out loud, testing how it felt on my tongue. My heart raced. Who was he? Where was he now? Before I could examine the rest of the contents, the sound of footsteps echoed down the hallway. Panic surged through me. I shoved the photo back, closed the box, and returned it to its place just as the door handle turned. My father stepped inside. He looked at me, his eyes narrowing slightly, as though he sensed something was off. I forced a smile, pretending to be casually flipping through a book from the shelf. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked, his voice calm but laced with something darker. "Yeah," I muttered, hoping my shaking hands weren't obvious. He walked past me and sat at his desk, his gaze sharp and deliberate. "Curiosity," he said, almost to himself, "is a dangerous thing, Amanda. Sometimes, knowing too much can ruin everything." His words cut through me. He knew. Somehow, he knew I had seen something. I quickly excused myself, retreating to my room before my mask could crack. As I closed the door behind me, I whispered the name again. Elias. The truth was out there, and now I had the first real piece of it. But what my father said haunted me. What could be so dangerous about knowing who I really was? Unless the answer was tied to something far darker. Something my father had spent years trying to bury that I couldn't get the name out of my head. Elias. It echoed inside me like a forbidden song, a secret I wasn't supposed to know. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that photograph. My mother smiling, a man's hand resting protectively on her shoulder, his gaze piercing straight through the camera. Straight through me. I needed answers. The next morning, I cornered my mother in the kitchen. She was preparing tea, her hands moving automatically, but I noticed the way her fingers trembled slightly when I said, "Mom, who is Elias?" The teacup slipped from her hand, shattering on the floor. Her face drained of color. She stared at me, lips trembling, as though I had just uttered a curse. "Where did you hear that name?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. I hesitated, then lied. I overheard Dad say it once. Her shoulders stiffened. She knelt down to pick up the broken porcelain, avoiding my eyes. "Amanda, there are things you don't understand. Things that are better left in the past." I crouched beside her, my voice shaking. "He's my real father, isn't he?" She froze. A silence stretched between us so heavy it felt like the air itself was suffocating me. Then, finally, she whispered, "Yes." My chest tightened. Even though I already suspected it, hearing her confirm it shattered something inside me. "Why didn't you tell me? Why all the lies?" I demanded. Tears welled in her eyes as she sat down, her voice trembling. "Because Elias wasn't an ordinary man. He loved you, he loved me, but he was involved in dangerous things. Things that could have destroyed us. When he disappeared, your stepfather took you in, gave you his name, his protection. It was the only way to keep you safe." "Disappeared?" I echoed. "What do you mean disappeared?" She shook her head. "It's complicated. One day he was there, and then he was gone. No body. No goodbye. Just gone. Gone." The word rattled in my chest like a locked door I couldn't open. My mind swirled with questions. If he was gone, why did my father, no, my stepfather, still act like he was protecting me from him? What if Elias wasn't dead? My mother seemed to sense my thoughts. She grabbed my hands tightly, her eyes burning with fear. "Amanda, listen to me. If you care about your life, never go looking for him. Promise me." But how could I promise that? Now that I knew his name, his face, his connection to me, I couldn't stop. I wouldn't stop. That night, when the house fell silent, I went back to the locked box. This time I studied every document inside. Among the papers, I found something strange, a receipt. It was dated just 3 years ago, long after Elias supposedly vanished. It wasn't much, just a hotel booking in another city. But it was proof. Proof that Elias might still be alive. My hands shook as I held the paper, my heart hammering so loud I was afraid it would wake the entire house. And suddenly, the pieces began to fit. My stepfather's controlling rules. His threats about curiosity. His obsession with keeping me safe. He wasn't protecting me. He was hiding me. As I lay in bed that night, clutching the receipt, a terrifying thought crept into my mind. What if Elias didn't abandon me? What if someone made him disappear? And worse, what if that someone was living under the same roof as me? The receipt burned in my hand like a forbidden key. I knew what I had to do. The next day, I skipped classes and took the first bus to the city listed on the hotel receipt. My heart pounded with every passing mile. What if this was all just another dead end? What if Elias was nothing more than a ghost, a figment of my desperate imagination? But deep inside me, a small voice whispered, "He's alive. He's been waiting." When I arrived at the old hotel, my palms were slick with sweat. The place wasn't glamorous. Peeling paint, flickering lights, a silence that clung to the walls. At the front desk, I showed the clerk the name on the receipt. She frowned, then glanced at me with narrowed eyes. He checked in often, but always under a different name. Tall man, dark hair, kept to himself. My chest tightened. That description matched the man in the photograph. "Do you know where he is now?" I asked, my voice trembling. The woman hesitated. Then she leaned closer, whispering, "You shouldn't be looking for him. People who do, don't come back the same." I left the hotel with my head spinning. The city streets felt foreign, hostile, every stranger's stare making me feel exposed. And then it happened. A hand grabbed my arm. I spun around, ready to scream, but froze. The man before me had the same piercing eyes as in the photograph. Older now, worn by time, but unmistakable. "Elias," I whispered. He stared at me in stunned silence, his lips parting as though he couldn't believe what he was seeing. Finally he murmured, "Amanda, you look just like your mother." My knees nearly buckled. After years of silence, of lies, of emptiness, I was standing face to face with my real father. We sat in a quiet cafe, my hands trembling around a cup I couldn't bring myself to drink from. "Why did you leave us?" I demanded. "Why did you disappear?" His expression hardened. "Because I didn't leave. I was forced to." He leaned in closer, his voice dropping. "Your stepfather, he isn't the man you think he is. He wanted me gone because he couldn't stand the truth. Your mother still loved me. You were my daughter, not his. He wanted to erase me from your lives." My stomach twisted. "So he made you disappear?" Elias nodded slowly. "He threatened me. Said if I ever came near you, he'd hurt you and your mother. I had no choice but to stay away. I thought staying hidden was the only way to keep you safe." My heart pounded as the pieces finally clicked into place. My stepfather's rules. His obsession with control. His constant warnings about curiosity. It wasn't about protecting me, it was about keeping his secret intact. Tears blurred my vision. "All these years, I thought you didn't want me. I thought you were gone." Elias's eyes softened, full of regret. "I wanted nothing more than to be with you. But I couldn't risk it. And now that you've found me, I fear he won't stop until he destroys everything." Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. A message from my stepfather. "Come home. Now." My blood ran cold. He knew. Somehow he knew. That night, I returned home to find him waiting in the darkened living room. His face was unreadable, his voice calm but laced with steel. "So," he said, "you've met him." I swallowed hard, my heart racing. "Why did you lie to me? Why did you try to erase him from my life?" His jaw tightened. "Because Elias is dangerous. He was never good for your mother. And he would have ruined you. I gave you stability. I gave you my name." "No," I snapped, my voice shaking with fury. "You gave me a cage. You stole my father. You stole the truth." His eyes darkened, and for the first time, I saw something raw in his expression. Not anger but fear. Fear of me. That night changed everything. I wasn't the same Amanda anymore. I knew who I was. I knew the truth. And no matter what lies my stepfather tried to weave around me, I would never be silent again. Because I wasn't his little girl anymore. I was Elias's daughter. And now, I was ready to choose my own path.